I watched my 16-year-old son, Marcus, carefully cutting his turkey head-down shoulders, hunched in that way that meant he was trying to disappear. The Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house in suburban Cleveland had been going smoothly until my older brother Brad decided to open his mouth. He looked across the table at Marcus with that smug grin I knew too well, and announced loud enough for everyone to hear, "You know, Marcus will probably end up working cleaning jobs since he's so quiet and weird." The entire dining room erupted in laughter. Aunts, uncles, cousins, even my parents chuckled along, but I saw what they missed. Marcus's hands started trembling as he gripped his fork. Growing up, Brad had always been the golden child. 3 years older than me, he was everything our blue-collar family valued. Star quarterback in high school homecoming, king the guy who could walk into any room and own it within minutes. I was the bookworm who spent Friday nights studying while Brad was out partying. Dad would beam with pride talking about Brad's latest touchdown or the girl he was dating while my academic achievements barely registered a nod. After high school, Brad went straight into construction work with our Uncle Tom's company, eventually starting his own business. I took a different path, earning my CPA certification and building a successful accounting practice. For years, we maintained an uneasy peace, but I could feel his resentment simmering beneath the surface, especially after my divorce 3 years ago left me raising Marcus alone. Marcus inherited my quiet nature and love of learning. He maintained a 4.0 GPA, belonged to the National Honor Society, and could solve calculus problems that would make most adults weep. But in our family's world of backslapping extroverts, his intellectual gifts meant nothing. Brad's son Tyler was following in his father's footsteps, playing varsity football and dating the head cheerleader. Marcus preferred chess club and science olympiad. The dinner had started pleasantly enough. Dorothy, my mother, had outdone herself with the traditional spread. The dining room table groaned under the weight of turkey stuffing cranberry sauce and her famous sweet potato casserole. Frank, my father, held court at the head of the table, regaling everyone with stories from his days as a factory supervisor. Uncle Tom and Aunt Linda had driven up from Akron with their twin daughters. Brad and his wife Jessica sat across from Marcus and me, Tyler, texting constantly on his phone despite repeated warnings to put it away. The conversation flowed through safe topics. Work was going well for everyone. The weather had been decent for November, and the Browns were having their usual disappointing season. I relaxed, thinking maybe this year we could get through a family gathering without incident. Then Brad started drinking his third beer and eyeing Marcus with that calculating look I recognized from our childhood. "Marcus, you're a junior now, right?" Brad asked, his voice carrying that false friendliness that always preceded an attack. "What are you thinking about for after graduation?" Marcus looked up from his plate, hope flickering in his eyes. "Well, I'm considering early admission to several universities. My guidance counselor thinks I have a good shot at some prestigious programs." "Universities, huh?" Brad chuckled, and I felt my stomach clench. "That's ambitious. But you know, not everyone is cut out for college. Some people are better suited for more practical work." The table fell quiet. Jessica shot her husband a warning look, but Brad was just getting started. He leaned back in his chair, that familiar smugness spreading across his face. "I mean, look at you, Marcus. You're so quiet and awkward. College is about networking, making connections, being social. You can barely look people in the eye when they talk to you." His voice gained momentum, feeding off the uncomfortable silence. "You'll probably end up working cleaning jobs since you're so quiet and weird." The explosion of laughter that followed felt like a physical blow. Dad let out his booming guffaw, slapping the table with his palm. Mom covered her mouth but couldn't hide her giggling. Uncle Tom and Aunt Linda exchanged amused glances while their daughters snickered. Even Tyler looked up from his phone to smirk at his cousin. I watched the color drain from Marcus's face. His hands began trembling so violently that his fork clattered against his plate. The sound cut through the laughter like a knife, but nobody else seemed to notice. They were too busy enjoying Brad's cruel entertainment. Something snapped inside me. The years of watching my brother belittle others, to build himself up, the constant favoritism from our parents, the way Marcus tried so hard to fit into a family that would never appreciate his gifts. All of it crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. Interesting, I said, my voice cutting through the dying laughter, since your business runs on my accounting skills. The room went dead silent. Brad's smile faltered his beer halfway to his lips. The family members who had been chuckling suddenly found their plates fascinating. Jessica closed her eyes and shook her head slightly. "What did you say?" Brad's voice carried a dangerous edge. I stood up slowly, my napkin falling to the floor. "You heard me. Your construction company uses my firm for all your accounting, payroll, and tax preparation. Without my work, you'd be buried in IRS penalties and bookkeeping disasters. So before you lecture my son about his future career prospects, maybe you should consider who's been keeping your business afloat." Dad cleared his throat nervously. "Now, boys, let's keep peace. It's Thanksgiving." But I wasn't finished, not by a long shot. Brad's face flushed red, the confident smirk replaced by something uglier. "My business runs just fine, little brother. And maybe it's time I found an accountant who doesn't think he's better than everyone else." The threat hung in the air between us. Jessica reached out to touch Brad's arm, but he shook her off. Marcus sat frozen, his eyes wide with shock at seeing his quiet father transform into something fierce and protective. "Go ahead," I said calmly. "Fire me. But first explain to everyone here how you've been telling potential clients that I'm unreliable and secretly trying to steal my accounts for your own bookkeeper. Explain how you've been undermining my reputation while gladly taking my professional expertise." The accusation hit its mark. Brad's face went from red to pale in seconds, confirming what I had only suspected until that moment. The pieces had been falling into place for weeks. Clients asking strange questions about my reliability, mentions of conversations they'd supposedly had with Brad about my work quality, and his newfound confidence in attacking me publicly. "That's ridiculous," Brad stammered, but his voice lacked conviction. "I would never do something like that." "Wouldn't you?" I looked around the table at my family members, their faces now reflecting confusion rather than amusement. "The same way you'd never humiliate a 16-year-old boy at a family dinner? The same way you'd never use family gatherings to tear down people who threaten your ego?" I turned to Marcus, whose hands had finally stopped trembling. "Get your coat, son. We're leaving." As we walked toward the front door, the dining room erupted in concerned voices and heated arguments. I heard Jessica's sharp words to her husband, Dad's flustered attempts to restore order, and Mom's worried questions about what Brad had really been doing. But what mattered most was the sound of Marcus's footsteps beside me, steady and sure for the first time all evening. The 20-minute drive home passed in heavy silence. Marcus stared out the passenger window at the November landscape, bare trees standing like sentinels in the fading daylight. I gripped the steering wheel, my anger slowly giving way to worry. Had I made things worse by confronting Brad so publicly? Would my outburst damage our family relationships permanently? And most importantly, how much had tonight's humiliation hurt my son? We pulled into the driveway of our modest two-story house in Lakewood, a suburb that offered good schools and quiet neighborhoods perfect for single fathers raising academic sons. I turned off the engine, but neither of us moved to get out. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. "I'm sorry," Marcus said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "For what?" I turned to face him, confused. "You didn't do anything wrong." "For being embarrassing. For not being like Tyler. For making you have to defend me." His words came out in a rush, years of accumulated shame pouring out. Maybe Uncle Brad is right. Maybe I am too weird for college. Maybe I should just accept that I'll never fit in anywhere. My heart shattered. I reached over and placed my hand on his shoulder, feeling how tense he was. Marcus, look at me. He reluctantly turned his eyes bright with unshed tears. Your Uncle Brad is wrong. He's been wrong about you since the day you were born. You're not weird, you're brilliant. You're not antisocial, you're thoughtful. And you're going to accomplish things that will make him eat every cruel word he's ever said about you. But the whole family laughed, Marcus whispered. They all think I'm a joke. Then they're all wrong too. The fierce protectiveness in my voice surprised even me. And I should have spoken up years ago instead of letting them treat you like you were less important than Tyler's football statistics. We sat in the car for another 10 minutes while Marcus told me things that broke my heart. How Tyler had been spreading rumors at school about our family being losers. How other relatives had made similar comments over the years, always disguised as jokes. How he'd been considering dropping his advanced placement classes because the attention made him uncomfortable. There's something else, Marcus said as we finally headed inside. Mrs. Patterson, my guidance counselor, called yesterday. She wanted to schedule a meeting with both of us about some opportunities she thinks I should consider, but I didn't want to bother you with it. What kind of opportunities? Early admission to several universities, full scholarship possibilities. She thinks my test scores and grades make me competitive for some really prestigious programs. He paused, looking ashamed. But I was thinking maybe I shouldn't apply. I don't want to be a burden if I can't afford it. That night, I lay awake thinking about the years I'd failed my son by trying to keep peace with my family. How many times had I let cutting comments slide by? How many opportunities had Marcus dismissed because he'd internalized their low expectations? And what was Brad really up to with my business clients? The next morning brought unwelcome answers. I arrived at my office in downtown Cleveland to find 3 voicemail messages from longtime clients. The first was from Robert Chen, owner of a small manufacturing company I'd been serving for 8 years. Clyde, I got a strange call from your brother yesterday, asking about your work quality. He seemed concerned that you might be having personal problems affecting your professional judgment. I told him I've never had any issues with your work, but I wanted to check with you directly. Give me a call when you get this. The second message was from Patricia Williams, who owned a chain of local restaurants. Her voice carried confusion and concern. Clyde, I'm not sure what's going on, but someone calling himself Brad Morgan contacted me about switching accounting firms. He claimed you'd been making errors in similar businesses and suggested I might want a second opinion on my books. I've been with you for 6 years and never had a complaint. So I'm wondering if there's something I should know about. Please call me back. The third message made my blood run cold. It was from James Fletcher, a construction contractor, who'd been one of my first clients when I started my practice 12 years ago. Clyde, this is Jim Fletcher. I got a call from someone named Brad who said he was your brother. He told me you've been going through some personal issues since your divorce and that your work quality has been suffering. He offered to review my books for free to make sure everything is accurate. I didn't give him any information, but I'm concerned about what he told me. We've known each other a long time, and I wanted to hear your side before making any decisions about my account. I sat in my office chair staring at the phone messages, the full scope of Brad's betrayal becoming clear. He hadn't just been making casual comments about my reliability. He'd been conducting a systematic campaign to undermine my professional reputation, using our family relationship to gain credibility with my clients. I spent the morning making damage control calls explaining to each client that Brad had no authority to represent me or my practice, and that his claims were completely false. Most were understanding, having worked with me long enough to trust my competence. But I could hear uncertainty in some voices, the seeds of doubt Brad had planted beginning to take root. Then I discovered something even more disturbing. My mail carrier, Pete Santos, stopped by my office during his afternoon route. We developed a friendly relationship over the years, and he looked troubled as he approached my desk. Mr. Morgan, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but I think someone's been messing with your business mail. Pete glanced around nervously before continuing. Your brother Brad approached me a couple weeks ago. Said you'd asked him to collect some of your mail because you were having trouble getting to the post office. He had this story about you working late hours and missing pickups. My stomach dropped. Did you give him any mail? Just a few pieces. Business envelopes, nothing that looked personal. But something didn't feel right about it. He seemed too eager, you know. And when I asked him about it later, he acted like he didn't know what I was talking about. Which pieces did he take? Pete shifted uncomfortably. A couple letters from what looked like potential clients, some correspondence from the state revenue department, and one envelope that had a law firm's return address. I thanked Pete and assured him he'd done the right thing by telling me. After he left, I immediately called my attorney Michael Rodriguez to find out what correspondence I might have missed. Funny you should call, Michael said after I explained the situation. I sent you a letter 3 weeks ago about a potential new client who wanted to discuss their accounting needs. When you didn't respond, I assumed you weren't interested in taking on new business. I never received that letter. There's more. The state revenue office sent you a notice about some routine filing requirements that had updates. Missing those deadlines could have caused problems for several of your clients. The implications hit me like a freight train. Brad hadn't just been bad-mouthing me to my clients. He'd been intercepting my mail to sabotage my business operations and steal potential new accounts. And if he'd taken a state revenue notice, he might have access to confidential information about my clients' tax situations. I called Marcus's school to confirm my appointment with Mrs. Patterson for the following week, then spent the rest of the day documenting everything I knew about Brad's interference. If he wanted to play dirty, I needed to be prepared for whatever came next. That evening, Marcus showed me his report card from the first quarter. 4.0 GPA, highest marks in every advanced class teacher, comments that praised his analytical thinking and quiet leadership. This was the kid Brad had dismissed as only suitable for cleaning jobs. Dad, Marcus said, as we reviewed his academic achievements, why does Uncle Brad hate us so much? It was a question I'd been asking myself for years. But looking at my son's gentle, intelligent face, I finally understood. Brad didn't hate us. He feared us. He feared that our quiet competence would eventually overshadow his loud mediocrity. And that fear had driven him to sabotage not just my business, but Marcus's self-confidence. Well, if Brad wanted a war, he was going to get one. But first, I needed to find out just how deep his betrayal went. The next morning brought devastating news. I discovered that Brad had convinced our parents to co-sign a business loan on his behalf, using false information about my supposedly failing accounting practice as justification for why he needed their financial backing. The $50,000 loan had been approved based on Brad's claims that he needed to distance his construction business from my declining professional reputation. Mom called me in tears after finding the loan documents in Dad's desk drawer. Clyde, I don't understand what's happening. Brad told us you were in serious financial trouble and that it was affecting his business. He said you'd asked him not to tell us because you were embarrassed, but that he was worried about the family reputation. Dorothy's voice shook with confusion and guilt. He needed our signatures as collateral for a loan to upgrade his equipment so he wouldn't go down with your practice. We thought we were helping both of you. Mom, my practice is doing fine, better than fine actually. Brad lied to you. But why would he do such a thing? He's your brother. Family doesn't hurt family like this. I wished I had an answer that would make sense to her. How do you explain to a mother that one of her sons has been systematically destroying the other out of jealousy and spite? How do you make someone understand that family bonds don't automatically create loyalty or love? The revelation about the fraudulent loan changed everything. Brad hadn't just been spreading rumors or intercepting mail. He'd committed actual financial fraud using our parents as unwitting accomplices. The money he'd borrowed under false pretenses had been used to expand his business while undermining mine. I hired Michael Rodriguez to investigate the full scope of Brad's actions and begin legal proceedings to protect my practice and my family's financial interests. But even as I took steps to fight back, I knew the damage went far beyond money or business reputation. Marcus had been listening to years of subtle and not so subtle messages that he wasn't good enough, wasn't the right kind of person, wouldn't amount to anything significant. And I'd been complicit by staying silent by choosing family harmony over my son's emotional well-being. That night I sat Marcus down for the hardest conversation of my life. Son, I owe you an apology. I've been letting your uncle and other family members treat you poorly for years because I was afraid of causing family conflict. I told myself I was protecting you by not making waves, but I was really protecting myself. I was taking the easy path instead of standing up for what was right. Marcus listened intently as I continued. You deserve better than a father who stays quiet when people attack your character. You deserve a father who fights for you, who defends your worth, who makes it clear that you're exactly who you're supposed to be. I paused, gathering courage for what came next. And you deserve to know that your Uncle Brad has been doing much worse things than making cruel comments at dinner. I told him about the intercepted mail, the false statements to clients, the fraudulent loan. I watched his face change from confusion to anger to something harder and more determined. What are we going to do about it? Marcus asked when I finished. We're going to fight back. We're going to protect ourselves and make sure he can't hurt anyone else this way. I met his eyes directly. And you're going to apply to every university Mrs. Patterson recommends. You're going to pursue every scholarship opportunity. You're going to show the world what I've always known, that you're capable of extraordinary things. For the first time since Thanksgiving dinner, Marcus smiled. The meeting with Mrs. Patterson revealed opportunities that took my breath away. Marcus's guidance counselor, a sharp woman in her 50s with gray hair and kind eyes, spread his academic records across her desk like a proud general displaying battle plans. Marcus is exactly the kind of student these programs are designed for, she explained, pointing to acceptance rates and scholarship criteria. His SAT scores put him in the 99th percentile nationally. His GPA is perfect, and his teacher recommendations are exceptional. But what really makes him stand out is his analytical thinking and his ability to work independently. She showed us early admission opportunities at universities I'd only dreamed about. Carnegie Mellon, MIT, Stanford, University of Chicago. Full scholarship programs that would cover tuition, room board, and even provide stipends for research projects. The application deadlines are coming up quickly, Mrs. Patterson warned. But I think Marcus has a real shot at several of these programs. The essay requirements focus on overcoming adversity and demonstrating resilience, which gives him a unique angle to work with. I looked at my son, seeing him truly, for the first time in years. Not as the quiet, awkward kid Brad made him out to be, but as a brilliant young man with unlimited potential. How had I let my brother's poisonous opinions cloud my vision for so long? That afternoon brought more disturbing revelations about Brad's campaign against my practice. 3 additional clients called with concerns about my situation, all based on conversations they'd had with my brother. But the worst discovery came when I reviewed my email correspondence with potential new clients. Several prospective customers had mentioned speaking with Brad before contacting me. According to their accounts, he'd positioned himself as a concerned family member who felt obligated to warn them about my personal problems affecting my work quality. Some had decided not to proceed with my services based on his warnings. Michael Rodriguez, my attorney, connected me with a private investigator named Sandra Lewis, a former police detective who specialized in white-collar fraud cases. After reviewing the evidence I'd collected, she delivered sobering news. What your brother has done could constitute wire fraud, mail fraud, and identity theft, depending on how far this goes, Sandra explained during our consultation. The intercepted mail alone is a federal crime, but to build a strong case, we need to document everything and see if there are other victims. Other victims Family members rarely limit this kind of behavior to one target. If he's willing to defraud your parents and sabotage your business, he's probably done similar things before. We need to check his business practices, his relationships with employees and subcontractors, his dealings with other family members. That evening, Uncle Tom called with information that confirmed Sandra's suspicions. My father's younger brother sounded shaken and angry as he related his own experience with Brad's manipulations. Clyde, I should have called you sooner, but I wasn't sure what to make of it at the time. About 2 years ago, Brad approached me about a partnership deal. Said his construction business was expanding and he wanted to branch into commercial renovation work. Tom paused and I could hear the regret in his voice. He convinced me to let him use my contractor's license for a big project downtown, said it was just a formality while his own commercial certification was being processed. What happened? The project turned into a disaster. Corners cut, materials substituted, deadlines missed. The property owner sued both of us and I nearly lost my license. Brad claimed he'd been following specifications I'd approved, but I never saw half the documents he was talking about. The whole thing cost me $20,000 in legal fees and damaged my reputation with several longtime clients. Did you suspect he was lying? I knew something wasn't right, but he's family, you know. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Now, after what Dorothy told Linda about the loan situation with your parents, I'm wondering if I was played from the beginning. Uncle Tom's story painted a picture of systematic fraud that went far beyond personal jealousy. Brad had been using family relationships to manipulate business deals, shifting blame and liability to his relatives when things went wrong. But the most heartbreaking revelation came from an unexpected source. Jessica, Brad's wife, called my office the next day, her voice tight with stress and fear. Clyde, I need to talk to you, but not at your office or my house. Can you meet me somewhere private? We arranged to meet at a coffee shop in Westlake, far enough from both our neighborhoods to avoid running into family members. Jessica arrived looking haggard, her usually perfect appearance showing signs of strain. Dark circles under her eyes, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, hands shaking slightly as she ordered her latte. I've been wanting to contact you since Thanksgiving, but I was afraid of what Brad would do if he found out, she began once we found a quiet corner table. What happened at dinner was horrible, and I'm sorry I didn't speak up for Marcus. But there are things you need to know about what Brad's been doing. Jessica pulled a manila folder from her purse and slid it across the table. I found these documents in Brad's home office. Financial records, copies of correspondence notes about his conversations with your clients. I think he's been planning this for months, maybe longer. The folder contained photocopies of bank statements showing deposits that didn't match Brad's legitimate business income. Client contact lists with notes about their vulnerabilities and concerns. Draft letters to state licensing boards making accusations about my professional competence. And most damning of all, a handwritten plan outlining steps to neutralize Clyde's competitive advantage. He's been obsessed with your success for years. Jessica continued, her voice barely above a whisper. He talks about you constantly, always comparing himself to you, always trying to prove he's the better brother. When your divorce happened, he saw it as an opportunity to finally come out on top. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm tired of living with someone who's consumed by jealousy and spite. Because what he did to Marcus at Thanksgiving was unforgivable. And because I'm afraid of what he might do next if he's not stopped. She paused, tears forming in her eyes. I also found evidence that he's been hiding financial problems from me, too. The construction business is in much worse shape than he's admitted. That loan from your parents isn't going toward equipment upgrades. It's keeping him from bankruptcy. The scope of Brad's deception was staggering. Not only had he been sabotaging my practice and defrauding our parents, but he'd been lying to his own wife about the state of their finances. His jealousy had driven him to risk everything his family had worked for, all in pursuit of bringing me down. Jessica, there's something else you need to know. I've hired an attorney and a private investigator to document what Brad's been doing. If this goes forward, there could be serious legal consequences for him." She nodded grimly. "I figured as much. And honestly, I think it's the only way to stop him. He's not going to admit what he's done or make amends voluntarily. He's too proud and too convinced that he's justified in everything he's done." "What about Tyler? How is he handling all this?" Jessica's expression softened with maternal concern. "Tyler's been acting out more lately, especially toward Marcus. Brad's been filling his head with stories about how your family looks down on us. How Marcus thinks he's better than everyone else because of his grades. I've tried to counter those messages, but Brad's influence is stronger." That night I sat with Marcus and showed him the evidence Jessica had provided, feeling sick about exposing him to the ugly realities of adult betrayal, but knowing he deserved to understand what was happening. "Dad, I think Tyler's been the one spreading rumors about our family at school," Marcus said after reviewing the documents. "Some of the things other kids have said to me match exactly what Uncle Brad writes in these notes. My son had been dealing with harassment at school based on lies his own uncle had created. The cruelty was breathtaking in its scope and precision. Marcus, I want you to know that none of this is your fault. Your uncle's actions are about his own insecurities and jealousy, not about anything you've done or who you are. I know that now. But for a long time, I thought maybe there was something wrong with me. Maybe I really was too weird and awkward to succeed at anything." Marcus looked directly at me with a maturity that broke my heart. "But seeing all this, understanding how far he's gone to hurt us, it makes me realize that the problem was never with me. It was with him." The next morning brought news that changed everything. Sandra Lewis called with an update that made my blood run cold. "Clyde, we need to meet immediately. I've discovered that your brother has filed a formal complaint against you with the State Board of Accountancy. He's claiming you've been mismanaging client funds and operating without proper oversight. This could threaten your CPA license and end your career." The complaint had been filed 3 days earlier, using forged client statements and fabricated evidence of financial misconduct. Brad had taken his sabotage campaign to its logical conclusion, attempting to destroy my professional credentials entirely. But Sandra had more disturbing news to share. The investigating officer assigned to your case is someone named David Park. When I ran a background check on him, I discovered some interesting connections. Park went to college with Sarah Mitchell, the bookkeeper Brad's been using for his business. They were roommates for 2 years and have maintained a close friendship ever since. Are you saying the investigation is compromised? I'm saying we need to be very careful about how we proceed. If Park has been feeding information to Sarah, and Sarah has been sharing it with your brother, then they've had advanced knowledge of the investigation process. That would explain how Brad knew exactly what type of evidence to fabricate and when to file his complaint. The web of corruption was deeper and more sophisticated than I'd imagined. Brad hadn't just been spreading rumors or intercepting mail. He'd been orchestrating a complex fraud scheme involving multiple accomplices and government officials. As I hung up the phone, I realized that everything I'd worked for over the past 12 years was hanging by a thread. My professional reputation, my ability to support Marcus, our financial security, all of it could disappear if Brad's plan succeeded. But looking at the evidence Jessica had provided, at the determination in Marcus's eyes, at the support I was receiving from unexpected allies, I knew something else. Brad had finally overplayed his hand. His jealousy and arrogance had driven him to leave a trail of evidence that would ultimately destroy him instead of me. The war was far from over, but for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like we had a chance to win. The State Board investigation officially began with a letter demanding that I provide extensive documentation of my business practices, client relationships, and financial management procedures within 10 business days. The timeline was deliberately punishing, designed to create maximum disruption to my practice while the investigation proceeded. I immediately retained Jennifer Walsh, a specialist attorney who focused exclusively on professional licensing defense. Jennifer had spent 15 years defending accountants, doctors, engineers, and other licensed professionals against board complaints, and her track record was impressive. The good news is that fabricated complaints usually contain inconsistencies that become obvious under scrutiny, Jennifer explained during our emergency consultation. The bad news is that the investigation process itself can damage your reputation even if you're ultimately cleared of all charges. She was right. Within days of the board's inquiry, becoming known 3 longtime clients decided to suspend our working relationship until the matter is resolved. 2 potential new clients chose other accounting firms after hearing about the investigation. The financial impact was immediate and severe, but the personal cost was even higher. Marcus came home from school looking defeated, his usual quiet confidence replaced by visible anxiety. Dad, some kids at school are saying our family is being investigated for stealing money. Tyler's been telling everyone that you're probably going to jail. Marcus's voice cracked with emotion. Mrs. Patterson pulled me aside today to ask if everything was okay at home. She's worried the stress might affect my college applications. The timing was deliberately cruel. Marcus's early admission deadlines were approaching rapidly, and the emotional turmoil was threatening to derail everything we'd worked toward. I watched my son struggle with standardized test prep while worrying about whether his father was actually a criminal. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of just defending against Brad's attacks, I was going to go on the offensive. Sandra Lewis had continued her investigation into Brad's business practices and discovered evidence of a pattern of fraud that extended far beyond his campaign against me. She arranged a meeting to present her findings, and what she'd uncovered was staggering in its scope. Your brother has been running what amounts to an elaborate shell game for at least 3 years. Sandra explained, spreading documents across the conference table in Jennifer Walsh's office. He uses legitimate construction contracts as cover for side deals that involve inflated billing material substitutions and kickback schemes. The document showed how Brad had been systematically overbilling clients while providing substandard materials and workmanship. He'd created fake invoices for supplies that were never delivered charged for premium materials, while actually using cheaper alternatives, and required subcontractors to pay him under the table for the privilege of working on his projects. But here's where it gets really interesting, Sandra continued. He's been using information stolen from your client files to bid on similar projects. The mail interception wasn't just about sabotaging your business. It was about gaining access to proprietary financial information he could use for competitive advantage. Jennifer Walsh leaned forward intently. Sandra, are you saying he's been using stolen client data to underbid competitors? Exactly. He knows their cost structures, their profit margins, their cash flow challenges. He can undercut their bids because he has inside information about their operations. Sandra pulled out another folder. And there's more. Remember that state revenue notice he intercepted? It contained updated filing requirements that could have affected several of your clients' tax situations. Brad has been using that information to approach those same clients with warnings about potential compliance issues. The picture became clear. Brad had been positioning himself as a helpful family member, alerting my clients to problems I'd supposedly missed, problems he knew about only because he'd stolen the correspondence that would have allowed me to address them proactively. We have enough evidence here to file federal charges, Jennifer observed. Wire fraud, mail fraud, identity theft conspiracy. But there's something else we need to consider. She showed us a copy of the complaint Brad had filed with the state board. The level of detail was far beyond what a construction contractor should know about accounting regulations and investigation procedures. Someone with inside knowledge of the board's processes helped him prepare this complaint. The language, the specific accusations, the timing of the filing, it all suggests professional guidance from someone familiar with how these investigations work. That's when Sandra revealed her most damning discovery. I've been monitoring communications between Sarah Mitchell and David Park, the investigating officer. They've been exchanging personal emails and text messages throughout the investigation process. Park has been providing Sarah with confidential information about the board's procedures and evidence requirements. That's a clear violation of investigation protocols, Jennifer said grimly. If we can prove collusion between the investigating officer and your brother's associate, it would invalidate the entire proceeding. But catching Park and Sarah in their corruption scheme required patience and careful documentation. Meanwhile, the investigation continued to damage my reputation and threaten my livelihood. The stress began taking its toll on our entire family. Mom called daily, torn between loyalty to both her sons, but increasingly troubled by the evidence of Brad's deception. Dad retreated into stubborn silence, unwilling to believe that his golden child could be capable of such systematic betrayal. The worst moment came when Marcus broke down during a college interview conducted over video conference. The interviewer from Carnegie Mellon had asked about his family support system, and Marcus started crying as he tried to explain that his father was dealing with some business challenges but is completely honest and hardworking. I watched my brilliant son struggle to defend my integrity while his own future hung in the balance, and something inside me hardened into steel resolve. Brad's jealousy had driven him to attack not just me, but an innocent teenager whose only crime was being intellectually gifted and emotionally sensitive. That evening, I called a family meeting that included Uncle Tom, Aunt Linda, and even Frank and Dorothy. It was time to lay all the cards on the table. We gathered in my parents' living room, the same space where countless family celebrations had taken place over the years, but tonight felt different, charged with tension and unspoken accusations. I've asked you all here because our family is facing a crisis that goes far beyond a disagreement between brothers. I began my voice steady, despite the emotional weight of what I was about to reveal. Brad has been systematically committing fraud, and it's time everyone understood the scope of what he's done. I presented Sandra Lewis's findings methodically document by document, showing the pattern of deception that had been hidden behind Brad's confident exterior: the forged loan application, the intercepted mail, the stolen client information, the coordinated attack on my professional license. Frank sat in his recliner, his face growing paler with each revelation. Dorothy clutched a tissue tear streaming down her cheeks as she realized how thoroughly she'd been manipulated. Uncle Tom's expression shifted from skepticism to anger as he recognized parallels to his own experience with Brad's partnership proposal. "This can't be true," Frank finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Brad wouldn't do these things. He's made mistakes, but he's not a criminal." "Dad, look at the evidence," I replied gently. "Look at the bank records, the email trails, the witness statements. This isn't speculation or family conflict. This is documented fraud. Aunt Linda spoke up for the first time." "Frank, I've been worried about Brad's behavior for years. The way he talks about Clyde, the resentment, the constant need to prove he's better? This doesn't surprise me as much as it should." The room fell silent as the weight of the evidence settled over everyone. Then Dorothy asked the question that had been haunting me for weeks. "What happens to Tyler?" "He's just a teenager. If his father goes to prison, how do we protect him from all this?" It was a fair question that cut to the heart of why this situation was so tragic. Brad's actions had put his own son at risk, potentially destroying Tyler's future along with his own. "Jessica is filing for divorce and full custody," I explained. "She's cooperating with the investigation in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Tyler will be protected as much as possible, but he's going to need support from all of us to get through this." Frank stood up abruptly and walked to the window, staring out at the darkened street. When he turned back to face us, his eyes were filled with a pain I'd never seen before. 41 years ago, I held that boy in my arms and promised his mother I'd raise him to be a good man. Where did I go wrong? How did I fail him so completely that he became capable of something like this? "You didn't fail him, Frank," Uncle Tom said quietly. Some people just make choices that can't be explained by their upbringing or circumstances. Brad chose jealousy over love, deception over honesty, and now he has to face the consequences. Dorothy wiped her eyes and looked directly at me. Clyde, I owe you and Marcus an apology. We've been unfair to both of you for years, always favoring Brad because he was more outgoing, more traditionally successful. We failed to see your quiet strength and Marcus's remarkable gifts. What matters now is that we protect Marcus and support each other through whatever comes next, I replied. But there's something else you all need to understand. Brad's complaint to the state board could end my career if it's not handled properly. Marcus's college opportunities could be affected if this drags on much longer. That's when Uncle Tom made an announcement that surprised everyone. I've been in contact with Sandra Lewis about my own experience with Brad's fraudulent business practices. I'm prepared to testify about what he did to me 2 years ago. If it helps build the case against him and protects Clyde and Marcus, then it's the right thing to do. Aunt Linda nodded in agreement. We've been silent too long about Brad's behavior. It's time for truth and accountability, even if it's painful for the family. The meeting ended with a plan. We would support the federal investigation, fully providing whatever evidence and testimony was needed to stop Brad's crimes. We would rally around Tyler and Jessica to help them rebuild their lives. And we would make sure Marcus understood that his family's love and support were unconditional. As everyone prepared to leave, Frank pulled me aside for a private conversation. Son, I've made terrible mistakes as a father. I let my favoritism toward Brad blind me to his faults and your strengths. I don't know if I can ever make up for the damage I've caused, but I want you to know that I'm proud of the man you've become and the father you are to Marcus. It was the first time in my life that Frank had told me he was proud of me. And while it couldn't erase years of feeling like the disappointment in the family, it was a start toward healing. The next morning brought news that would change everything. Jennifer Walsh called with an update that made my heart race with hope and anticipation. Clyde, we caught them. David Park made a critical error in his communication with Sarah Mitchell. He sent her confidential board documents using his official email account, creating a permanent record of the conspiracy. The board's ethics committee has launched an internal investigation, and Park has been suspended pending a full review. What does this mean for my case? It means the complaint against you is going to be dismissed with prejudice. The board can't proceed with an investigation that's been compromised by official misconduct. You'll be completely cleared of all charges. But there was even better news to come. The federal prosecutors are moving forward with charges against Brad, Sarah, and David Park. The evidence Sandra gathered, combined with the documentation from the board investigation, gives them multiple counts of conspiracy fraud and official corruption. Brad is looking at serious prison time. As I hung up the phone, I realized that the nightmare was finally ending. But more importantly, it was ending with justice being served and truth being revealed. That afternoon, I shared the news with Marcus, watching his face light up with relief and excitement. Does this mean I can focus on my college applications without worrying about Dad going to jail? He asked with a smile that broke my heart and healed it at the same time. Yes, son. It means you can focus on showing the world how brilliant you are, just like I've always known you to be. The vindication came swiftly once the state board's internal investigation confirmed the extent of David Park's misconduct. Within a week, I received an official letter dismissing all charges against me and offering a formal apology for the compromised investigation. The board also implemented new protocols to prevent future corruption and launched a review of other cases Park had handled. But the real victory came when Marcus received his first college acceptance letter. Carnegie Mellon University offered him early admission with a full scholarship that covered tuition room board and a research stipend. Mrs. Patterson called personally to congratulate us, her voice beaming with pride. Marcus's essay about overcoming family adversity and maintaining academic focus under pressure was remarkable. she explained. The admissions committee was particularly impressed by his resilience and his ability to find strength through intellectual pursuits during a difficult time. 3 more acceptance letters followed within days. MIT, Stanford, and University of Chicago all offered similar scholarship packages, recognizing Marcus not just for his academic achievements but for his character and determination. The quiet, supposedly weird kid Brad had dismissed was being courted by some of the most prestigious institutions in the country. The federal investigation moved with impressive speed and thoroughness. Sandra Lewis had provided prosecutors with such comprehensive evidence that plea negotiations began almost immediately. Sarah Mitchell agreed to cooperate fully in exchange for a reduced sentence, providing detailed testimony about the conspiracy and Brad's role in orchestrating the scheme. David Park faced immediate termination from the state board and criminal charges for official corruption. His cooperation with Brad's conspiracy had compromised multiple ongoing investigations, requiring the board to review dozens of cases he'd handled improperly. But it was Brad himself who provided the most dramatic developments. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the prospect of a lengthy federal trial, he initially maintained his innocence and blamed everyone else for his troubles. According to Jessica, who had moved back to her parents' house with Tyler, Brad alternated between rage and self-pity, unable to accept responsibility for his actions. The moment that changed everything came during a family confrontation that Frank and Dorothy initiated. My parents, finally understanding the full scope of Brad's betrayal, demanded that he come clean and attempt to make amends for the damage he'd caused. I wasn't present for that conversation, but Uncle Tom was there as a witness, and he described a scene that was both heartbreaking and cathartic. Brad walked in acting like he was the victim, complaining about how the family had turned against him, Tom explained. But when your father showed him all the evidence and demanded an explanation, something broke inside him. According to Tom's account, Brad finally admitted to everything. The mail interception, the client sabotage, the fraudulent loan application, the conspiracy with Sarah and David Park. But his confession came with justifications that revealed the depth of his psychological resentment. He told your parents that he'd always felt inferior to you academically and professionally, Tom continued. Said he was tired of being the dumb brother who only knew construction work while you had the fancy degree and white-collar career. He convinced himself that you looked down on him and that everything you'd achieved was somehow taken away from what he deserved. The twisted logic of Brad's jealousy was both pathetic and infuriating. He'd destroyed relationships, committed multiple felonies, and traumatized his own family because he couldn't accept that success comes in different forms, and that his brother's achievements didn't diminish his own worth. Frank's response to Brad's confession was swift and final. You're no longer welcome in this house until you've served your sentence and made full restitution to everyone you've hurt. I won't have a criminal using family loyalty as an excuse for destroying innocent people. It was the first time in 41 years that Frank had chosen one son over the other, and he'd chosen justice over favoritism. The legal resolution came faster than anyone expected. Faced with federal charges that could result in decades in prison, Brad accepted a plea agreement that sentenced him to 7 years in federal prison with full restitution required for all victims. Sarah Mitchell received 4 years for her role in the conspiracy, and David Park was sentenced to 3 years plus permanent disbarment from government service. Jessica's divorce proceedings moved forward smoothly, with Brad offering no contest to her requests for full custody of Tyler and division of assets. She would be able to keep their house and start fresh with her son, away from the chaos Brad had created. But the most significant development was Tyler's reaction to learning the truth about his father's actions. Jessica arranged a meeting between Tyler and Marcus, giving the cousins a chance to address the bullying and harassment that had damaged their relationship. The conversation took place in our backyard on a crisp December afternoon, with both boys nervous but determined to clear the air. Tyler, who looked remarkably like his father, but without the underlying arrogance, spoke first. "Marcus, I owe you a huge apology. I said terrible things to you and about your family because my dad was filling my head with lies. I know that's not an excuse, but I want you to understand that I believed what he was telling me." Marcus, displaying the maturity that had always set him apart, responded with characteristic thoughtfulness. "I understand why you did what you did. And I don't hate you for it. But I need you to know how much it hurt, especially when other kids at school started treating me like I was some kind of loser. I know and I'm sorry. I've already talked to everyone at school and told them I was wrong about your family. I also told them about your college scholarships and how smart you actually are." Tyler paused, struggling with his next words. "I guess I was jealous too, just like my dad. You make everything look easy and I have to work twice as hard just to get average grades. Being smart in school doesn't make someone better than anyone else," Marcus replied. "You're good at things I could never do. You're confident, you're social, you're a natural leader. We just have different strengths." The conversation between the boys lasted for over an hour, covering years of misunderstandings and hurt feelings. By the end, they weren't best friends, but they'd found a foundation for mutual respect that had never existed before. Tyler's transformation over the following weeks was remarkable to witness. Freed from his father's toxic influence and bitter competitiveness, he began to show genuine curiosity about Marcus's academic achievements and college plans. He even asked Marcus to help him with his own college preparation, recognizing that his cousin's success was something to learn from rather than resent. The changes in our extended family were equally profound. Frank and Dorothy began attending counseling sessions to understand how their favoritism had contributed to the family dysfunction. They made deliberate efforts to celebrate Marcus's achievements with the same enthusiasm they'd always shown for athletic accomplishments. Uncle Tom and Aunt Linda became vocal advocates for Marcus, sharing news of his college acceptances with pride and making sure everyone understood what an exceptional young man he was. The family members who had laughed at Brad's cruel comments during Thanksgiving dinner now seemed embarrassed by their complicity and eager to make amends. Most importantly, the professional consequences of Brad's actions extended far beyond his personal punishment. The State Board of Accountancy implemented new oversight procedures to prevent future corruption. The federal prosecutors used the case as a model for investigating similar white-collar fraud schemes. And several of Brad's former victims were able to recover financial losses through the restitution process. My own accounting practice not only survived the crisis, but actually grew stronger as a result. The publicity surrounding the case, while initially damaging, ultimately demonstrated my integrity and professionalism under pressure. Several new clients specifically sought out my services because they'd heard about how I'd handled the situation with dignity and determination. But the most rewarding outcome was watching Marcus regain his confidence and embrace his potential without reservation. The young man who had been told he was only suitable for cleaning jobs was now fielding scholarship offers from the most prestigious universities in the country. In late December, Marcus made his final decision about college, choosing MIT's early admission program with a focus on computer science and business ethics. His essay for the scholarship application, titled "Learning Truth from Lies: How Family Crisis Taught Me the Value of Integrity," earned recognition from the admissions committee as one of the most compelling personal statements they'd received that year. The night before Christmas Eve, as we decorated our tree and prepared for a holiday celebration that would be very different from previous years, Marcus asked me a question that showed how much he'd grown through this experience. "Dad, do you think Uncle Brad will ever understand what he did wrong, or will he always blame other people for his problems?" It was a profound question that went to the heart of personal responsibility and human nature. I considered my answer carefully before responding. I think Brad is too invested in seeing himself as a victim to truly accept responsibility for his choices. But what matters isn't whether he changes, it's whether we learn from what happened and make sure we never let jealousy and resentment poison our own hearts. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. I feel sorry for him in a way. He spent so much energy hating us that he never appreciated what he actually had. Tyler's a good kid. Jessica loved him. He had a successful business before he destroyed it with greed. He threw all of that away because he couldn't stand to see us succeed. My son's insight and compassion, even towards someone who had caused him significant harm, reminded me that we had truly emerged from this crisis stronger and wiser than before. The new year brought developments that exceeded even my most optimistic expectations. The federal prosecutors decided to use Brad's case as part of a larger investigation into white-collar fraud networks, leading to the discovery of several related schemes involving corrupt officials and fraudulent business practices across multiple states. The investigation revealed that Sarah Mitchell had been running similar operations in 3 other cities, before settling in Cleveland, always targeting professional service providers who had access to valuable client information. David Park had been taking bribes to manipulate board investigations for over 5 years, compromising dozens of legitimate practitioners while protecting actual wrongdoers. The scope of the conspiracy was so extensive that it attracted national media attention. Several business journals ran feature stories about the case, praising the thoroughness of the investigation and highlighting the importance of professional integrity in small businesses. But more importantly for our family, the media coverage brought unexpected recognition for Marcus and his academic achievements. A reporter from the Cleveland Plain Dealer interviewed him about overcoming adversity during his senior year of high school, and his story resonated with readers across the region. Marcus Morgan represents the kind of resilience and determination that makes America great, the article concluded. Despite facing family turmoil and personal attacks, he maintained his focus on academic excellence and earned scholarships to multiple prestigious universities. His story proves that character and hard work will always triumph over jealousy and sabotage. The article led to speaking invitations from local high schools and community organizations. Marcus, who had once been painfully shy about public attention, began accepting opportunities to share his story with other students facing bullying and family challenges. His first speech, delivered to the National Honor Society chapter at his high school, was met with a standing ovation. Mrs. Patterson later told me that several students approached her after Marcus's presentation saying they'd been inspired to pursue more challenging academic goals despite social pressure to conform. The transformation in Marcus's confidence was remarkable to witness. The quiet, withdrawn teenager who had trembled during Brad's Thanksgiving attack had become a thoughtful young man who could speak eloquently about resilience, integrity, and the importance of staying true to your values under pressure. Meanwhile, the legal consequences continued to unfold for Brad and his co-conspirators. Federal investigators discovered that the $50,000 loan Brad had fraudulently obtained using our parents' signatures was just one of several similar schemes he'd operated over the previous 3 years. Additional charges were filed against Brad for tax evasion, bankruptcy fraud, and racketeering. His sentence was extended to 12 years in federal prison, with enhanced penalties due to his leadership role in the conspiracy and his use of family relationships to facilitate crimes. Sarah Mitchell, facing additional charges related to her activities in other cities, saw her sentence increase to 8 years. David Park received the maximum penalty of 7 years plus permanent disbarment from any government position. The restitution requirements meant that Brad would be financially responsible for hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages to victims across multiple states. His construction business was dissolved with assets liquidated to help pay court-ordered compensation. But perhaps the most significant development was the impact on Tyler's relationship with his extended family. Free from his father's toxic influence, Tyler began to flourish in ways that surprised everyone who knew him. He approached me privately in early February with a request that demonstrated remarkable maturity for a 17-year-old. Uncle Clyde, I know this might sound weird, but I was wondering if you could help me understand what my dad did wrong from a business perspective. I mean, I know he broke the law and hurt people, but I want to make sure I never make similar mistakes in my own life. I spent several afternoons that winter explaining business ethics, professional responsibility, and the importance of treating competitors and clients with respect and honesty. Tyler listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and taking notes as if he were studying for an exam. I think I understand now why Dad was so angry all the time, Tyler said during one of our conversations. He saw business as a zero-sum game where your success meant his failure. He never considered that there was room for both of you to succeed in different ways. Tyler's insights were remarkably mature, and I realized that Brad's downfall had actually freed his son from inheriting the same destructive mindset that had poisoned so many relationships. Jessica began dating a kind man named Robert, who worked as an elementary school teacher and treated Tyler like his own son. The contrast between Robert's gentle, supportive approach and Brad's competitive, manipulative behavior was striking, and Tyler thrived under the influence of a positive male role model. The healing process extended throughout our extended family as well. Uncle Tom and Aunt Linda became regular fixtures at family gatherings, no longer walking on eggshells around Brad's volatile mood swings. Their twin daughters, who had always been intimidated by Brad's aggressive personality, began to open up and participate more actively in family conversations. Frank and Dorothy made deliberate efforts to rebuild their relationships with both Marcus and me. They attended his high school graduation ceremony where he was named valedictorian and received multiple academic awards. The pride on their faces as they watched their grandson accept recognition for his achievements was genuine and deeply moving. But the most profound change was in Frank's understanding of what it meant to be a successful man and father. He pulled me aside after Marcus's graduation ceremony for a conversation that brought tears to my eyes. Clyde, I spent 40 years thinking that success meant being the loudest voice in the room, the guy who could dominate every conversation and situation. I thought Brad represented everything I wanted in a son because he had that kind of aggressive confidence. Frank paused, struggling with emotions he'd rarely shown. But watching you handle this crisis with dignity, watching Marcus achieve things I never dreamed possible, I realize I had it completely backwards. Dad, you did the best you could with what you understood at the time. No, son, I failed you both. And I almost lost the chance to know the remarkable man you've become, and the extraordinary young man Marcus is. Frank's voice shook with regret. I can't change the past, but I want to spend whatever time I have left being the father and grandfather you both deserve. The conversation marked the beginning of a new relationship between Frank and me, one based on mutual respect, rather than childhood dynamics and unconscious favoritism. We began having regular dinners together discussing everything from current events to business challenges to his hopes for Marcus's future. Dorothy, meanwhile, became one of Marcus's biggest supporters and advocates. She kept scrapbooks of his academic achievements, newspaper articles about his scholarship success, and letters of recommendation from teachers and college professors. Her fierce pride in her grandson's accomplishments made up for years of lukewarm support. The spring of Marcus's senior year brought a steady stream of recognition and opportunities. He was selected as a National Merit Scholar, received the state's highest academic achievement award, and was chosen to speak at the regional graduation ceremony representing all high schools in northeastern Ohio. But the honor that meant the most to him came from an unexpected source. The Cleveland business community established a scholarship fund in Marcus's name for academically gifted students facing family adversity. The annual award would provide college support for young people who demonstrated resilience and integrity under pressure. I want future recipients to understand that being different, being quiet, being intellectually curious are strengths, not weaknesses, Marcus said during the scholarship fund announcement. And I want them to know that sometimes the greatest gift our challenges give us is the chance to discover who we really are when everything else is stripped away. His words reflected a wisdom and perspective that would serve him well in college and beyond. The boy who had once believed he might only be suitable for cleaning jobs was now creating opportunities for other young people to pursue their academic dreams. Meanwhile, my accounting practice continued to grow and evolve. I developed a specialty in helping small businesses recover from fraud and financial abuse, drawing on my own experience to guide other entrepreneurs through similar crises. The work was deeply satisfying because it allowed me to transform our painful experience into something that could help others. Every client I assisted in rebuilding after betrayal or corruption felt like a small victory over the forces that had tried to destroy our family. I also began speaking at professional conferences about ethics in small business, sharing lessons learned from Brad's attempted sabotage. The presentations were well received, leading to consulting opportunities and additional clients who valued integrity and transparency in their business relationships. But the most rewarding development was the relationship Marcus and I built through this shared experience. The crisis had forced us to communicate openly about difficult topics, creating a foundation of trust and mutual respect that would last for the rest of our lives. As we prepared for his departure to MIT that fall, I reflected on how much we'd both grown through this ordeal. Marcus had discovered inner strength he never knew he possessed. I'd learned to be the kind of father who fights for his child rather than avoiding conflict. And our extended family had been forced to examine long-held assumptions about success, loyalty, and what it means to support each other. The final piece of the legal puzzle fell into place in late summer when the federal investigation concluded with a comprehensive report detailing the extent of the fraud network Brad had been part of. The report credited our case with exposing systemic corruption that had affected hundreds of small businesses and individual practitioners across multiple states. Several legislative changes were implemented as a result of the investigation, including enhanced oversight of professional licensing boards, stricter penalties for official corruption, and improved protections for whistleblowers who report fraud and abuse. Brad's name appeared throughout the report as a key figure in the conspiracy, ensuring that his criminal legacy would serve as a cautionary tale for future generations. But more importantly, the investigation's conclusions vindicated every decision we'd made to fight back against his sabotage and seek justice for his victims. As summer turned to fall and Marcus prepared to begin his freshman year at MIT, I realized that our story had come full circle. The family dinner where Brad had tried to humiliate and diminish my son had ultimately led to Marcus receiving recognition opportunities and support beyond anything we could have imagined. The quiet, supposedly weird teenager was about to embark on a journey that would likely take him to heights of achievement and influence that Brad could never have reached through all his scheming and manipulation. Justice had been served, truth had been revealed, and the future looked brighter than ever. 5 years have passed since that Thanksgiving dinner changed everything, and I'm writing this on the eve of Marcus's graduation from MIT with highest honors and a double degree in computer science and business ethics. Tomorrow he'll walk across the stage to receive recognition for his senior thesis on preventing financial fraud in small businesses, a project that grew directly from our family's experience with betrayal and redemption. The young man who was once told he could only work cleaning jobs is now fielding job offers from technology companies, consulting firms, and government agencies that want to hire someone who understands both the technical and ethical dimensions of business integrity. But more than his professional prospects, I'm proud of the person Marcus has become. He volunteers with organizations that support academically gifted students from troubled families. He mentors younger students who struggle with social anxiety and intellectual isolation. And he maintains relationships with the teachers, guidance counselors, and community leaders who supported him during our darkest period. Mrs. Patterson, who retired last year, attended every one of Marcus's college award ceremonies and scholarship recognitions. She often tells people that watching Marcus overcome adversity and achieve his potential was the most rewarding experience of her educational career. Tyler, now a junior in college studying business management, has become one of Marcus's closest friends and strongest supporters. The cousins who once represented opposite sides of a family conflict now collaborate on projects and share advice about career planning and personal development. Marcus taught me that success isn't about tearing other people down, Tyler said during a recent family gathering. It's about building yourself up through hard work, integrity, and treating others with respect. Jessica remarried Robert 3 years ago, and their blended family has become a model of healing and growth after trauma. Tyler thrives under Robert's gentle guidance, having learned that masculine strength can be expressed through kindness and emotional intelligence rather than aggression and dominance. The transformation in our extended family relationships has been equally remarkable. Frank and Dorothy, now in their 70s, have become devoted grandparents who celebrate academic achievements with the same enthusiasm they once reserved for athletic accomplishments. They attend Marcus's presentations, display his awards prominently in their home, and tell everyone they meet about their grandson's success at MIT. Uncle Tom and Aunt Linda host annual family reunions that focus on supporting each other's goals and celebrating diverse forms of success. The gatherings have a completely different atmosphere than the competitive judgmental events of the past, with conversations centered on encouragement and mutual respect. The financial restitution from Brad's criminal conviction helped our parents recover the money they'd lost through his fraudulent loan scheme, but the emotional healing took much longer. Frank underwent counseling to understand how his unconscious favoritism had damaged family relationships, and he's worked hard to rebuild trust with both Marcus and me. I wasted too many years thinking that being a man meant being the toughest guy in the room, Frank told me recently. Watching you handle this crisis with dignity and watching Marcus achieve things through intelligence and character taught me what real strength looks like. Dorothy became an advocate for educational excellence in our community, establishing a scholarship fund for students who excel academically despite family challenges. The program has helped dozens of young people pursue college opportunities they might not have had otherwise. My accounting practice has evolved into a specialty firm that helps small businesses and individual practitioners protect themselves from fraud, corruption, and professional sabotage. The work is deeply meaningful because it allows me to use our painful experience to help others avoid similar trauma. I've written a book about recognizing and preventing family financial abuse, drawing on Brad's tactics and our recovery process to provide practical guidance for people facing similar situations. The book has been well received by both professional and general audiences, leading to speaking opportunities and consulting engagements across the country. But the most satisfying aspect of my work is the mentoring relationship I've developed with other single parents who are raising academically gifted children. I help them understand the unique challenges these kids face and provide strategies for building confidence and resilience in environments that don't always value intellectual achievement. The legal consequences for Brad and his co-conspirators have played out exactly as the prosecutors predicted. Brad is serving his 12-year federal sentence at a minimum security prison in Pennsylvania, with earliest possible release in 3 more years. Sarah Mitchell was released last year after serving 8 years, but she's struggled to find employment due to her criminal record and professional disbarment. David Park completed his 7-year sentence and has been working as a night security guard, having been permanently banned from any government or professional licensing work. The corruption scandal he participated in led to comprehensive reforms in professional oversight procedures across multiple states. Jessica occasionally receives letters from Brad, usually around holidays or family milestones, but she's made it clear that their relationship is permanently over. He's missed Tyler's high school graduation, college acceptance celebrations, and other important moments that he can never recover. I feel sorry for him sometimes, Tyler told me recently. He destroyed his own life because he couldn't handle other people's success. But I can't let his choices define my future or hold me back from becoming the person I want to be. Tyler's perspective reflects a maturity that his father never achieved. And it gives me hope that the cycle of jealousy and resentment that poisoned our family for so many years has finally been broken. The ripple effects of our story have extended far beyond our immediate family. Marcus's scholarship fund for students facing family adversity has helped over 50 young people attend college over the past 5 years. Several of those recipients have gone on to establish their own scholarship programs, creating a network of support for academically gifted students from challenging backgrounds. The business ethics course Marcus developed during his senior year at MIT is now being taught at universities across the country using real-world case studies to help future business leaders understand the importance of integrity, transparency, and fair competition. My own speaking engagements and consulting work have reached hundreds of small business owners and professional practitioners, helping them recognize warning signs of fraud and sabotage while building stronger ethical foundations for their practices. But beyond the public impact, the most important outcome has been the relationship Marcus and I built through this shared experience. We learned to communicate openly about difficult topics, to support each other through crisis, and to find strength in our shared values, even when everything around us seemed unstable. Dad. I know this sounds strange, but I'm actually grateful for what Uncle Brad put us through, Marcus said during a recent conversation. Not for the pain he caused, but for the opportunity it gave us to discover who we really are when everything else is stripped away. His words reminded me of something I'd learned during those dark months when our family was falling apart. Sometimes the greatest gift our challenges give us is the chance to choose who we want to be when faced with adversity. We can choose bitterness or growth, revenge or justice, isolation or connection. Or Marcus chose growth, justice, and connection, and those choices have shaped him into someone who will make a positive difference in the world. He's planning to start his own technology company focused on developing systems that help small businesses detect and prevent fraud, directly addressing the problems that almost destroyed our family. Tomorrow, as I watch my son graduate from one of the world's most prestigious universities, I'll think about that Thanksgiving dinner 5 years ago when Brad tried to diminish Marcus's future with cruel words and family laughter. I'll remember my son's trembling hands, the sound of mockery filling our parents' dining room, and the moment I realized I had to choose between family peace and my child's dignity. I chose my son. And that choice changed everything. It led to justice being served, truth being revealed, relationships being healed, and opportunities being created. Most importantly, it led to Marcus understanding that his quiet strength, intellectual gifts, and compassionate nature are exactly the qualities the world needs. The young man who was told he could only work cleaning jobs is about to graduate as the valedictorian of his MIT class with job offers from companies that will pay him more in his first year than Brad's construction business ever earned in its best year. But more than the external recognition, Marcus has developed the inner confidence and moral clarity that will guide him through whatever challenges lie ahead. As for Brad, he sits in federal prison, having lost his family, his business, his freedom, and his reputation. His jealousy and resentment cost him everything he once valued, while the nephew he tried to destroy has achieved success beyond anything Brad ever dreamed possible. The contrast between their paths serves as a powerful reminder that we become what we choose to focus on. Brad focused on his brother's success and let that focus poison his own life. Marcus focused on his goals and values, and that focus has led him to achievements that honor both his potential and his character. Our family story proves that standing up to bullies, even when they're family members, is sometimes the most loving thing you can do. It protects the innocent, serves justice, and creates opportunities for healing and growth that wouldn't exist otherwise. The next time someone tries to tell you that keeping peace is more important than defending truth, remember what happened when one father decided his son's dignity was worth fighting for. Remember that silence in the face of cruelty isn't peace at all. It's just another form of violence. And remember that sometimes the people who try hardest to diminish your light are the ones who are most afraid of what your brightness reveals about their own darkness. Marcus graduates tomorrow with the world at his feet and the character to make the most of every opportunity ahead. The boy who trembled during a family dinner has become a young man who will never tremble again, no matter what challenges he faces. That's what happens when someone loves you enough to fight for your future, even when the fight seems impossible to win. What moments in your own life have forced you to choose between keeping peace and defending what's right? Have you ever had to stand up to family members or close friends who tried to diminish your dreams or potential? How did you find the courage to protect yourself or someone you love from people who should have been supporting you instead of tearing you down? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Share your experiences of overcoming family conflict, workplace sabotage, or personal betrayal. Let others know how you found strength during difficult times and what you learned about yourself in the process. If this story resonated with you, please like this video to help others find it who might need to hear this message. Subscribe to my channel for more stories about resilience, family dynamics, and standing up for what's right even when it's difficult. And please share this story with anyone you know who might be facing similar challenges. Sometimes knowing that others have walked this path and emerged stronger on the other side can provide the courage needed to take that first difficult step toward defending yourself or someone you love. Thank you for listening to our story and for being part of a community that believes in justice, truth, and the power of standing up for what's right. May you find the strength to protect what matters most in your own life, no matter what obstacles you face along the way. Remember, sometimes the people who love us most are the ones who are willing to fight the hardest battles to protect our future. And sometimes we have to be that person for ourselves and the people we care about. The choice is always ours to make.